Hi everyone, welcome back to the third episode of the Sophomore Tea. I'm your host, Cal Borse. I'm a resident director here at Central Connecticut State University. This is, like I said before, the third episode of the Sophomore Tea, and today we're going to be talking about what's going on in the Central Connecticut State University streets. I'm here with Sarah Horrax. She is an associate director for Student Activity-Led Development, SALD, and hosts wonderful programs here on campus. So why don't you just introduce yourself and just share some thoughts with.
Sure. I mean, as Cal said, I'm Sarah. I'm from Student Activities and Leadership Development, which also includes Rec Central, our campus recreation program. So we oversee student media, student government, a lot of the major events on campus, but our bread and butter is really working with the clubs and organizations on campus.
So I think, well, didn't you recently get a promotion in SALD to specifically a higher level? And I think, well, just going, because I think you've been in SALD, like we were talking about before, for a really long time. And it's like, because I know when I first started when I was first a student here and I went to Rec, and like then I understood that Rec was a part of SALD.
Yeah.
I never realized the level and the great events that you guys put on a regular basis, because I mean you guys have scheduled out events for like the entire semester and into the year. So why don't you just kind of give people a little rundown of like what that's like, how that planning goes into it, and what you kind of tailor what you kind of tailor each program for.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's like a huge question,
Of course,
right?
yeah. So take your time with it.
And really what I'll say is our philosophy is taking our advice from students and following their lead. So they're the ones that come up with the event ideas. I can sit at home and come up with different themes for events and plot that all out on my own, but then who would come? So I was a student here. I graduated December of 2008. So I know what students liked in the early aughts, but what do students like now? I need to know from them. So I always take their lead and talk to them about what their vision is. So the first step usually is talking to them about their mission, what they're all about, what their goals are for the semester or the year, or even long-term career-wise, and really go from there to see how their vision can work on Central's campus, given the resources, the facilities, and budget is a
of course, that's a big one. I'm not too stranger to that. But so since you graduated in 2008, like you said, you kind of have to take a student's perspective. So like, how is like over your time here? Because when did you start as an official faculty member at Central?
So that was actually fall of 2019 of 2019.
Okay. So it's been a little bit of time.
So not too long ago, but that was a interesting time because I had one full semester as a full-time academic or administrative faculty person. So I had that fall semester. We had a spring concert planned out. It was a really cool festival-style spring concert, and then the world shut down.
So between when you graduated in 2008 to 2019, you were on the higher ed track, right? In this kind of general area. So like from when you graduated and you went into the higher ed track to where you are now, how have you seen the kind of student perspective, like from when you were a student to now where you're at now? Like how have you seen that change and like that gap, quote unquote gap, develop over time?
It's really interesting because what I've actually focused on is how it hasn't changed often. I've always found CCSU students to be the kind of students who want to roll up their sleeves and help other people. CCSU students, I think, are very community-based and they care about one another, so that has stayed the same. What's changed a little bit is the vehicle in which you reach students, so a lot of the digital content, this type of podcast, video, social media has exploded since I was a student here. Not every student had a cell phone when I went to college, so you can understand that has changed a lot. So the creativity is just boundless now. But again, that thread of caring about others and wanting to be a part of something bigger than themselves hasn't really changed.
So I've noticed that, like, because we talk about this a lot in my department, it's like, because a lot of kids just want to stay in their room. And it's a struggle for like even the programming that we put on. Like we could have the greatest program. We could have amazing things. And it's like, no matter how good it is, some kids, even if they are aware of it, they're just not even pulled towards it, right? And it's like, it's a struggle not just Central's dealing with, right? And like you pointed out, like once you get those kids there, oftentimes, because like no one wants to be burdened, no one wants to be like, oh God, I got to go to a pro. You know, like there has to be a bridge in which they can cross in order to get to that program. And so, like, everyone's been struggling with is like getting kids to those programs. So what are some of like at least with this day and age, some of the key techniques that you have found, like for instance, this podcast, meeting them where they're at, like how have you been able to close that gap and get kids to come when, you know, everyone just kind of wants to do their own thing, you know, but like also too, say for instance, for commuters or for other people on campus that are looking to live here or in grad school, right? Oftentimes they just kind of come here. We talked about this in our previous episode. Just come here, go to class, and leave, right? But like, there's so much more here. There's so much more value that people don't necessarily see. And so it's like, I think through one of the ways that you highlight that is through, like, for instance, the programmings, the events, and like literally your entire department, right? Like literally leading it through students. So how do you help people understand the value and go beyond just like going to class? I want to be alone.
Yeah, I mean, so again, that's a huge conversation to have. I often see myself as a bridge between services and students. So, you know, you mentioned commuters. We have a commuter assistant program in which Monty and Mena, who are wonderful, they're so fun. They are doing some outreach to commuter students to let them know that they're invited to events on this campus. A lot of students don't think that they can come to all the events, and we're like, no, they're for you. So we do try to act as a bridge and open up, you know, everyone's access to services, programs, events. And then again, for me, we try to provide a lot of leadership development for the club leaders so that they can have those meaningful conversations with students in their clubs or in their residence halls or in study lounges or in the library here. So we try to help them find the value of their student leadership experience, and that way they can take what they learn and spread that with others in the community. Because really, I think involvement is like a domino effect, where your initial thing is you just walk into a club meeting and you sit there and you take it in and you're like, I don't know what to do or what's going on. Then maybe your second or third meeting, a club leader says, hey, we're looking for someone just to create a poster for an upcoming bake sale or an upcoming meeting.
There's so many clubs.
Right, I know. And so that's when, you know, a new student might say, you know what, I volunteer to do that poster. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll try. And then as that student becomes more and more involved with the club, they then become the go-to person. They might become a club leader, and then that puts them in spaces that they might not have expected, with different professors, faculty members. Each club and organization has a faculty advisor, so that's kind of a cool way to connect them with another kind of more adult on campus.
Yeah, definitely. It's a great track, because I didn't even necessarily think about that, because I think at least when I'm going into this, I thought one of the main things that SALD did was you know, focus on events and, you know, building that kind of area. But like a whole other part of it is the leadership and development for students. And I think oftentimes people will see clubs and different organizations such as like SGA and just the Africana Center and things like that, and think that like, oh yeah, it's specifically tailored to what they're focusing on. Say for instance, like the B Club or, you know, the car club or, you know, whatever it is. But like you kind of pointed out there's so much more value than you initially see, because like you said, you start that poster, right, and then you do the poster and you're like, oh my God, I actually did a pretty good job on the poster, and then you want to start to get more integrated into those. And it's just, I think the biggest thing is just overcoming that hurdle of just getting involved and like having the willingness. So like what would you say to someone that, or a student or a commuter in that kind of spot that doesn't want to be bothered by, you know, or at least at first, you know, they just see clubs, organizations as more of a chore as opposed to something that could add so much value to them as an individual?
Yeah, I'd say you grow from discomfort. So sometimes showing up is the hardest part, but once you get in the door and you do it one time, you realize it's not scary and that other people are kind of in the same boat as you and that you're not alone. And you know, for some folks, it depends on what their motivation is. If they need to bulk up their resume, joining a club can help with that. If they are looking for a particular skill, a club can help with that. So it really depends on the student's motivation and what they're looking for in their college experience. But the thing about Central is I think it's one of the more affordable universities. 4-year universities in the state of Connecticut. It's affordable, and if you want to get the best bang for your buck, like take on all the opportunities that you possibly can. But again, it just starts with showing up that first time, or even if folks are shy, even just answering a survey on an Instagram story, anything like that. That initial outreach can actually go a long way. And there was a student a few years ago that graduated, and she went to a Central Activities Network meeting, just like, oh, I don't know what this is, but I'll show up. I'm scared, but I'll show up. And that's where she made a friend while helping with events, just a general member. That friend then became her roommate. Then she decided to take on the leadership with planning an event, planned an event around like the Bachelor or the Bachelorette, and she had just a great time doing it, right? The roses, there were roses everywhere. It was and she had a fun time with that. And then she just got more and more incorporated into the club and some of the leadership positions within that club. And then when we needed a student to moderate a panel for the president of the university, I was like, hey, you want to try this out? You got some public speaking experience at the last event introducing our performer. I think you could do this. And she was like, me? Little old me? No. And so she moderated the virtual panel for the president of the university. And so now the president of the university knows who she is. And when we needed representatives to go to the legislature and say why public education, higher education is important in this state of Connecticut, went to that student and said, hey, do you mind testifying to the legislature? And she was like, really? So she went from just being like, I'm gonna show up at a club event to hosting her own event, introducing performers, moderating a panel, and talking with the legislature. And all of that experience helped her land her dream internship in Hawaii. So
that is a prime example of like why you should get involved and why you should do those things. And I think because to me, every single time you brought up that next challenge to her, in her mind, she was like, oh, me? Like that's like, so that self-belief in herself, she didn't even believe she could do that. But it's like from the outside looking in, you saw that. You saw like what she could do when she had that initial panel with the president. It's like, okay, you did so well in that, you can go and do something for the legislature when the opportunity arises. And so I think there's so many students specifically here, they have, where maybe they're based on their work experience, their student life and other things, they have those base qualities, but they're just not aware of it themselves to really build on top of that. And so through clubs, through different things, and just by taking that first step, that is what, like you said, it's like a domino effect, and it's just like that just allows them to just get more and more and more involved.
Yeah, and you never know, you might be the student who picks the next spring concert artist. So that can be something that happens, or you might be
big decisions.
And with the student government, they allocate over, I want to say $1 million in funds, or $500,000 in funds. So there are students doing that, allocating that amount of money, and that not only looks great on a resume, but it also gives back to the CCSU community. Having to make those decisions can be a huge experience.
So how do you, when you are like telling a student, like at first, because I would imagine, having a student oversee $1 million budget, is definitely like something I don't even feel comfortable doing that. Like I have like I manage the South North budget. I'm already like nervous about that. But like when you give like those larger tasks, like what are the qualities that you look for in a student or like in a club? Because I'm not sure if it's like tailored, like because I know you oversee like pretty much all of it, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I help with all of it. I supervise, I advise.
Yeah, but
there's a whole team.
Of course, yeah, but like in your discussions with everyone else, like what are some of the kind of common characteristics that you look for in a student that you like would select to, say, for instance, host a panel or to put on or for CAN or something along those lines?
Yeah, I'd say that students who are coachable, who can hear advice, but then also ask questions. So students who are willing to get feedback. Students who are curious about the process, then often want to be part of either changing the process or making the process better. So if I get a student who's really inquisitive and asks good questions, I'm like, you should join student government because you are asking why this is the way it is at Central or how things happen at Central. I'm like, you join student government because these are great questions that you're asking. Whereas if they're asking more questions about event planning, it's like, join the Central Activities Network or one of those things, or co-host a Devil's Den at 10 p.m. Those are every Thursday night. So
Oh my God,
free food.
Yeah, free food.
Free food, free novelties.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like this one right here from a while back. But overall, so would you say that developing those events and developing those kind of individuals would you say that's like a key part of your job?
That's what I always hope for. So there's a lot that goes into our jobs as far as purchasing and travel, but where we find the most joy, and I'll speak for the other folks in student activities, is having those group conversations with the club leaders and setting them up for success to have those other conversations with their club, whether it's a difficult conversation of like, hey, the idea we have, it's just not feasible given the budget we have or given the space that's available on campus. We coach them through creating agendas for meetings, resolving conflict. That leadership development is really what brings me joy, and that's our model, right? Is like we can be role models and we can give advice, but ultimately it's up to students to decide and have their own autonomy and agency. Because all of the clubs are directed by students. They might have me, they might have a faculty advisor, but ultimately we want students making the decisions. So I would say that's the best part of my job, is when I get to just talk with students and help them with their vision and their goals. But a lot of my job also is kind of like a travel agent slash marketing director
there's a lot that goes into it.
ATM.
It's different every day, I'm sure. It's not black and white by any means. I would. And because I remember when I worked at Rec, one of the great things that I saw, because I know when Rec was first opened, and I think it was 2019. Yeah, it was the spring semester of your first year, I believe.
Yeah, so they were still wearing hard hats to enter the building.
Okay, well, yeah, because I just remember I was able to like work out there, and then I was like, this is awesome, and then we lost it.
I think it was spring semester, so like that winter of 2020. It was like grand opening, and then just kidding, grand closing.
So I used to go to the Rec gyms, like when they had one in Beecher and in San May, right? And so I know, and they used to be in the basement of Kaiser, and so I know, at least from my perspective, and big testament to, I'm sure, SALD, Scott Squared, that, at least in my opinion, that department has completely transformed in terms of like the internal student infrastructure that they have going. Because I was like friends with all the area supervisors and the managers, and like just how they like ran that place, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a phenomenal job that provides students with great professional experience, because not only are they overseeing staff, they're managing different areas, and like you said before, they're like pretty much, as long as it's within the boundary of this is allowed and this is not allowed, right? Like they can pretty much do what they want with that area in terms of getting like gym equipment with the programs that they have, or what external events like the community kind of building events that they have, right? It's like really, really big stuff. And it's just really cool to see that take place from a student's perspective, and then it's student led, and like we touched on before, it's like obviously they're an expert in being a student, right? And they know what at least to them, what their current generation wants. So on that basis, what are some things that our students are cooking up for the spring semester?
There's a lot going on. The spring is always packed, right? I mean, next week alone we have the Black Student Union presents their Night in Harlem, which is a formal gala. It's an annual program, so that is taking place next week on Saturday, so you can get tickets and you can bring guests, which is excellent. And then we have the spring concert in April, which is part of Spring Week, which is a collaboration with IRC, CAN, SGA, a bunch of clubs and organizations. So that's going to be a huge week for us as far as programming and having a really good time. So we're really looking for April is wild. April is very wild.
Is there anything like which all the spring events sound amazing, by the way. Definitely go to them. Anything like that you're excited about for like in the coming fall years, like, or any like bigger projects that you guys are working on? Because I know like every department kind of have, like, just from an internal perspective, like it's just something that they are slowly working towards and adjusting towards over the following years. It's like, is there anything SALD is like trying to develop or any different initiatives?
Yeah, so we really want to take leadership development to the next level.
Gotcha.
So we've done a little bit of that with Leadership Weekend.
Oh, okay.
So we do have our Leadership Weekend retreat coming up where we take CCSU students into the woods, into cabins that are winterized so no one's freezing. There is Wi-Fi, there's showers and everything. But that's a really great opportunity to have students just kind of leave campus, talk about leadership development, really do a lot of bonding. But that's just one program. So my vision for the future with that is to do more trips off campus that are based in leadership. I think that those are high impact practices that really stick with students long after they've graduated. You know, again, I'm not an academic. I did teach first year experience, but I'm not a professor. Things that happen in the classroom stick with students, but where learning really happens is based in emotion. And so when you have a certain experience or a great experience with a club or organization, you have fun, you make these connections, that really sticks with you. And so when you're talking in interviews, you can be like, I had this really great experience at Central that I contributed to or I helped with. I think that's kind of ultimately my goal, is to create those types of experiences that will last a lifetime.
Yeah, and because that's a huge part of college. Just this, I think specifically what you focus on. Like, definitely, yeah, you're here to get a degree, but like that degree isn't just the credits that are in your degree evaluation. It's like you said before, it's that resume. It's like what have you done here, and it's like what the experience, the value that you've transformed yourself as an individual with. And I think specifically with what you're trying, or with what your vision is in the future, is like, at least from what I've learned from the brief time I've been here, like professional development opportunities are so valuable because like you get those, say for instance, you go to another organization, right? Well, let's say, that is obviously established, is like world renowned in their area, and you guys, like we were pretty much have been saying this whole episode, like that bridge to show them what that other side is like, and show them like, okay, if you put your all in here, if you get involved, if you take all those steps, imagine yourself in 5 years from now, you could be in a spot when you leave this university to be on that path. And it's like just like with that individual that you pointed out with the internship in Hawaii, like that's a great example, because I mean, I'd imagine 5 years from now, like without the experience that they had here, they would not be able to get that internship in Hawaii, and then wherever they end up with that following job, occupation, is really the foundation was developed here. And I think it's just really interesting to see how different, because there's so many opportunities here specifically, like, because I think SALD is by far one of like the leader. Obviously, it's the leader. It's in the title, right? It's the leader for student development. But there's so much value there. I think people just have to be aware of it and then be willing to take that first step.
Yeah, and again, I would say to students, like if there's a club that relates to your major, just show up a few times or join it on Club Central, clubcentral.ccsu.edu. Join it, be aware of it. So like that awareness piece is number one, then just kind of show up and see what happens. And I had another student in the social work club who just kind of was like, I'm a social work major, should probably join the club. Got involved, then became president, planned a women's march in Washington, D.C. And then ... got a whole, I don't know if it was an internship, I don't know what you call it, but she was working for Joanna Hayes. I'll say it's an internship in Washington, D.C. over the summer doing policy work that related to social work. And it was just like a beautiful thing. And she got that experience of planning a trip to Washington, D.C. and seeing activism live and firsthand. So then when she wanted that internship, it was a smooth ride where she learned a lot, but she had that background that she got from.
It's just crazy. Like you laid it out there. Like all I'm thinking in my head, I was like that is a prime example of why. Like, and there's just so much to it. And I think at least for me in my own experience, like within these past, like how long have I been here? Like a little under 5 years, like as a student and then as an employee here, it's just like, it's transformed my life and where I'm going to be able to go. And it's just like seeing that is alone, like how this is just like a medium for change. And it's just like, I think we said in the last couple episodes, or like, I think it was the second episode, like you said before, the student that you pointed out, most social activism starts right here on campus, right? And it's like, it's student led, and it doesn't seem like, oh, I'm just a student, I can't really do much. Oh no, you can do so much, and it's really valuable to see. And I think luckily we have amazing people like you to lead those kind of things. I mean, we have such great leadership here on campus, and we can just develop so many great initiatives, events, and opportunities that can not only serve you, but serve the community that you're in at the same time.
Absolutely.
So, is there anything else that you'd like to share?
I mean, I don't know where to start, but you know, for anyone again who is a sophomore, you know, your freshman year, those are your first friends, but they're not your forever friends. Your sophomore year, join a club, go to an event, even if it's just for the free food. Meet a few folks, because when you go to a club, those are like-minded people who maybe share an interest with you, and those folks might end up being your forever friends that you still hang out with when you're in your 30s, like me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, that has been the third episode of the Sophomore Tea. Thank you so much, Sarah, for coming on. I hope you guys all enjoyed this episode. Make sure you stay tuned for episode 4. We'll see you all very soon. Thank you so much for watching.